these practices, these things that we do to create the space to feel. How many of you feel just a little more, I don't want to put a word to it, but just a little more open right now, a little more sacred, a little more holy? Do you feel holy? Not holier than thou, but holy. Like, it is truly how the soul comes through us. It's our sacred gift to feel that sense of sacredness. We are sacred beings, we're sacred vessels, and to resonate with the frequency of holy. When you just to say that word makes you act a different way, right? If I said, just please try to act holy, we all know what that looks like. But if we made that a practice, so I thought it would be fun to just dive into, how many of you in the room or outside have ever studied anything from the Islamic faith tradition or some of the truths that came through Muhammad as he channeled this text? Anyone? Bueller? No. Okay, great. So you won't know whether I'm telling you. So I'm going to make some stuff up. No, I'm just kidding. So many of you know that Erika and I got to tour through Turkey with a Sufi sheikh, Sheikh Kabir Halminski, and Khashoggi. I like to say Khashoggi. Hi. Or Khashoggi. I have an interesting way of saying places that are around here. But studying with Kabir, he's a master of the Quran. And interestingly, how many of you have heard of Hafez? Right? Okay, so there's Rumi, he's a 13th century mystic poet from Persia. But in the 14th century, there was Hafez, who was a little lighter. But the way you get the title Hafez is it's the name given to one who has memorized the Quran becomes a Hafez. So it's not just, I shall name you. It's, you have to earn that title. Hafez is one who's memorized the Quran. If you've ever seen that book, it's pretty thick. So there's something interesting in there when we start thinking about how do you memorize. And my thing is, I would say, he knows it by heart. When you know something by heart, you have it for the rest of eternity, not just this lifetime. That's it. So to know something by heart, like, so I think of songs. You know, I over the years as a performing artist, I had to memorize songs but I don't know how to memorize songs. I either learn them by heart or I don't learn them. So if I learn a song once, I've got it, right? The human jukebox, thank you very much. You know, just stick a quarter in me. But you can do the same thing. Think of the things you know by heart. They mean something to you, right? You can call to your mind or your heart's mind a memory of a certain thing, and you could replay it with such detail. It's like a time in your life when things were just, this was the most amazing time. I remember it like it was yesterday. That's because you're remembering it like it was right now. You could bring it to the surface of yourselves and get through the time-space thing and just be in the now moment all the time. So the Quran, the significance of Ramadan as it pertains to the Quran, it's this feast, it's a lunar calendar situation. It's usually the 9th month, but it ends with the time where Muhammad was mostly finishing up the Quran. And it ends with my favorite holiday is the Eid al-Fitr, which is the festival of sweets. And that will be April 21st this year. Okay, so it's like a 30-day fasting. And so from sun up to sundown, you don't eat or drink anything, not even water. And it's one of I see a lot of faces like, what? It sounds like abuse. To the body, it might feel like that for the first couple days. It might feel like we're depriving ourselves of something that is right for us to have, but it's more of a discipline. And I'm going to read a little bit about, it's one of the period of fasting and spiritual growth is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. And the others are declaration of faith, daily prayer, almsgiving, and they have to make this pilgrimage to Mecca. So to go to do the Hajj, to go around the stone, the sacred stone in Mecca. But if you just come to SoulCall Global, I'll check that off your list. You don't have to go to Mecca. The Mecca is within. It's a symbol, an outward symbol. Everything is the outward representation of the inward God, right? The soul. Everything is an outpicturing. So what this fasting is all about is so that this title today is called, fasting and feasting. In order to truly appreciate the feast that's to come, the fasting happens. so that when you get to experience these things that you've not had, or that you get, remember the vibrational mysticism talk we were talking about, how the higher vibrations in consciousness are so subtle. By not catering to the senses, the needs of just the body solely, we have access to the more subtle realms of consciousness, because our body is not ingesting something dense. Even if you're just a vegetarian or you just eat vegetables and lettuce, your body's busy doing something. But to offer my stomach's growling. I fasted this morning before I came, just so I could really get with the program. It's just a way of allowing ourselves to turn off the senses and to live more by the energy and the connection to Creator. Make sense? So if you look at other faith traditions, I think it's Friday night, from Friday night sundown to sundown on Saturday, Judaism practices fasting. It's every week. What? That's why I'm not doing that. No, I'm just kidding. There's that one. Christianity, we're coming up through Lent. Today's Palm Sunday for all the people who are followers of Christ. That's a big prepare either way. It's like the coming of the king with the palms. It just signifies there's a king coming. And it's a very significant time. People with their coats, their robes, to make way for this coming of the consciousness, right? It's all symbolic of things. But fasting, so it's a period of fasting and spiritual growth, and is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. So able-bodied Muslims are expected to abstain from eating, drinking, and sexual relations from the dawn to sunset each day of the month, these 30 days. Many practicing Muslims also perform additional prayers, especially at night, and attempt to recite the entire Quran. Right? So there's a goal, there's something to put your mind on. So when you think about this, if I say we can't eat anything until tomorrow, and I don't give you anything else, all you're going to think about is what? Food. But if you put your mind, okay, I'm not eating, so my body's not doing this, so that all of my being's intention can focus on something holy, something lofty, something that's going to bring me closer to the infinite. There's a saying from the devotees of Paramahansa Yogananda. It's like the more you can surrender to the guru or the wisdom of these great sages, the closer they can bring you to the infinite. So getting ourselves out of the way, these things we think we need, the more we can say no to those things, the more we can make room for the yes, right? Why is that important? The whole idea is not to become a follower of somebody else's faith tradition. It's just to practice what they taught so that you become your own mystic. You are a little walking faith tradition. You are. How often you practice your faith tradition, your connection, is up to you. Nobody can really tell you. We could give you all the instructions in the world. And part of the reason, part of the exciting thing about it is if you're all having this experience of SoulCall Sunday today in the room, it's different than at home, but you're all having your experience, and you'll take something different, slightly different away from the experience we had here today. Much like if I polled, siblings in your family, if you have siblings, and you all had a shared experience, something happened and you were all there. If I asked each one of you to come into the room and say, what happened that day? Everyone will give you a slightly different version, just like 360 degrees of the circle. The point in the middle is the actual thing, but our vantage point, our point of view based on our needs at the time, our likenesses at the time. So we're essentially, anytime you conjure up a memory of something that happened, you're recreating and creating again your past. And if you think too far ahead, you're projecting too much information into the future. The idea is to try to just stay here now. So becoming your own little walking faith tradition, why is that important? So that you're not living by the experience of someone else's reality. Does this make sense? I see heads nodding. You're not living by the experience of someone else's reality. You can listen to their reality and let it inspire you to experience your own. Because we'll hear it differently. It won't ever be the same. It won't be as pure as when the infinite speaks to you through the language of your own heart and you start channeling your own wisdom, right? So Muhammad didn't read or write. He did not read or write. His wife, Aisha, is the one who translated everything he said and was the scribe for him. Why is that important? Muslims love that he couldn't read and write because they were sure that he didn't get this information from having read this book and that book and that. He didn't get it anywhere else because he couldn't have. So it kind of proves that it directly came through him to them. And it's not the radical form that some people practice either. It's actually a very beautiful faith tradition that keeps God right in the middle. One of the things they do when they do salat, their prayers, you see them pranam, you put their foreheads on the ground. I remember, I've mentioned this before. Who remembers why that is significant? Lisa.
So their heart is above their head.
Exactly. It's the only time that your heart is above your head. So you just kind of surrender. Good. A++. Excellent. Help yourself some cake pie and ice cream. So it improves our hearing of the infinite ourselves. So we get that pure, if I read something to you, you'll interpret it differently. So what the Lord, like the Lord of Lords, the God of Gods is after is for you to hear it. Listen then, Jesus would say it. Listen then if you have ears. Listen for yourself. For example, we hear things differently, even though it's coming the same. A long time ago, I like to start stories like that. It's fun to be able to say that. We're privileged to be as old as I am. In the early 1990s, the late 1900s, I was traveling back and forth a lot to New York City, and I was performing a lot in New York City. And I had connected with a friend. I was in the meditation group, and one of the Indian people in my meditation group had a friend from India who lived in Jersey City. Nothing against Jersey City or anyone from there, but that was a little rough and tumble. I didn't know it going into it, but she said, when you go to New York to sing at the bitter end, my set started at 2 a.m., which was awesome, So anyhow, that's not the story. The story is I called this woman named Sonal to get her address because I'm going to drive from Pittsburgh to Jersey City. And I said, okay, thank you so much for letting me stay with you. And this is back before GPS and even MapQuest and all that. You needed a triptych, literally. Remember those?
Mm-hmm.
So she said, I live at 127 Monte Gomare Street. And I said, 127 Monte Gomare. And she said, no. 127 Monte Gomare Street. And I said, 127 Monte Gomare. No. And I said, so it's not 127. No, yes, 127, but it's Monte Gomare. And I said, what is Monte Gomare? And when I wrote it down and I said, oh, Montgomery Street. Yes! She said, yes, Monte Gomare. Oh, in the words of Janet Jackson, soap opera says, you've got one life to live. Who's right? Who's wrong? She said it the same, and I said it back to her the same. The information was there. She knew what she was saying. I didn't. But all of a sudden it clicked. So I think about this when I think of faith traditions and somebody else's interpretation of what came through somebody else thousands of years later. Come on, give it up. I'm sorry, you got to stop. You've got to take it into your own heart. There are people that can help you with the symbolism. Like I like teaching these faith traditions. I love it. But once you're on the path with it, you could see what they were trying to say. And I tried not to give it an exacting thing. Let me just open it a little bit, like we could do with photos on our phone now. You can see it, but when you want, I'll just open it for you. But then you go in. We just open the door and you go in and see what you see. It's kind of like Helen loves to go to thrift stores now. Any store you go to, it's filled with stuff. Same store, one store. They've got their tagline, the slogan that brought us all in. But we'll all walk out of there with something most often completely different. Right? We'll start in a different section. We'll navigate that store differently. And each one of us will navigate wisdom from other faith traditions differently too. Allow it to be an entree, but not the way. Don't do it. If it opens you to yourself in a deeper way, to have your own connection, do it. But if it tells you to leave your head at the door and just do what I say, no, don't do it. There aren't very many true gurus on the planet these days. They're around, but If they ask you to leave your consciousness, your brains at the door and just do it, run, don't walk. You see what I'm saying? And I think that's what I was interested in the Essential Mystics class for. It's so that the mystics came out of these introductions to these faith traditions that are thousands of years old. So you can do it too. Jesus would have said, and he did, follow the children. The children shall inherit the kingdom. If you have the mind of a child, because you don't think you know so much. And you're not trying to make sense of it all the way around. You just are doing it. Like, why did you do that? When you ask little kids, why did you do that? What do they most often say? I don't know. Did it. And so, keeping kids from harming themselves and recognizing you do have a body, so you can't jump off the ledge and you can't, they don't realize it sometimes that this thing they're still so close from where they came from, right? So you got to learn how to navigate here. You got to protect your organism. I'm not saying do anything rash, but I'll tell you, fasting is not going to kill you if you're able to do it, if you're able-bodied. They say that first. If you have a reason why you can't do it, don't do it. It's harmful to you, right? So who are we helping? So we don't fast, then feast. We fast so we can feast. It creates more space. It creates more space. It creates more of a sense of being empowered by, dominion over the earth. Genesis. Man was given dominion over the earth. That means over yourself, not over everybody else and the planet. The planet's not so thrilled with what's going on and what's it doing. It's kind of showing us, well, I've been here a little longer than all of you, and I know how to fix this. You could build your homes wherever you want them, but if they don't belong there, guess where they're going? And it's not even in a wrathful, mean way. It's just, hey, I got to create balance. If you want me to sustain all you people, you got to do it this way, not that way, right? So love the earth we're on, but dominion over the earth means we're made of the earth. We're made of the stars. We're made of all of the things in the known and the unknown universe. You're it, stardust. It's beautiful. But to have control over yourself, these are the practices that the wisdom of the faith traditions offers. So put them into practice, and then you can come up with your own experience of it, which is what is necessary, or else we'd all just be one glob of humanity. Human beings would just be one massive glob, all connected. Well, we're not. Why? We're not supposed to be, because the infinite has got, for every 10,000 ideas we have as to a way to do it, that the infinite has 10 gazillion. I mean, I don't know. Right? So here we are, 8 billion people. So the Quran was channeled through Muhammad a little at a time from December 22nd of 609 Common Era and culminated at 632 Common Era. And as I said, his wife is the one who was the scribe for it. And it was important because it maintains that his revelation was pure and directly from Allah, which is God. So allowing yourself to open to the possibility that you can do the same thing. Whether you can read or write or not, you can catch the infinite. You can catch the infinite and be your own divine scribe. Be your own divine scribe. I remember giving up things at Lent. I really loved it. Did you ever? I grew up Catholic. I also railed against Catholicism from the time I was 9 and had the words to put together why it didn't work for me. But there's some mysticism in Catholicism. There's no question. It's deeply mystical. Some of it's teased out to put a whole bunch of people in between. But that doesn't mean you could find truth everywhere. You could find the infinite everywhere if we're looking through the lens of that and not what's wrong with something. Try to find what's right with something. Do you ever see somebody and you just want to say to them something nice, like notice what they're doing well when you're teaching children or adults. Compliment the thing that they're doing well and then offer a suggestion if you're in the position of being mentor, like spiritual teacher, so coaching clients. You find the thing they're doing well. When I coached softball, it was the same thing. It was like finding the thing that the player does well and then using that thing to explain the thing we need to work on a little bit, right? But I felt it was like a sacred blessing to be able to prove to myself first that I could do without this little thing the infinite gave me because I wanted the infinite more than the thing. I got that. It was like, I could do without chocolate because I know there's going to be a basket full of it at the end of this track. I know it's coming. I could do without it, but I can't do without God. That's the practice. We can do, and we have. How many of you have gone without things? Some people's electricity went out for days recently. Water, my furnace went out. Like you could do literally almost without anything for a sustained period of time. But you can't do without the infinite. It's impossible. It's impossible. And you also, one of the other really important parts of fasting is to give us that feeling of emptiness. And the way that the Quran describes it is to give you a sense of what it feels like to feel poverty so that we become more compassionate for the people who are sincerely suffering. It makes us compassionate so that we can see. Mother Teresa did the same thing. There was this really interesting, fabulous story. Mother Teresa, somebody toured Calcutta and one of the leper houses that she had. And they went through it, and this woman was quite wealthy and decided she was going to donate hundreds of mattresses to the nuns and to the people. And the nuns slept on the same kind of mattresses that the lepers were sleeping on. And so one day all these mattresses arrive. Mother Teresa hurries out and said, "No, we do not want these." And everybody's, why? Especially the nuns, I'm sure, like, what do you mean? But she said, no, how will you ever be able to be on the same level and be able to tend to the people you're tending to if you put yourself above them? Whoa, that's intense. Yeah, that's probably, I see a lot of people like, yep, that's why I'm not doing that. You don't have to. Nobody's saying you need to go home and get rid of your mattress and throw it. Nobody's saying that. But the point is, every once in a while, if you experience something that's slightly uncomfortable, there's a lesson in it for you. There's something there for us. There's something there like, wow, I'm glad this is not my existence all the time. So to train ourselves to sleep is all right, no sleep is all right. Food is all right, no food is all right. You can get along without anything. But you don't quit God. God is source. Don't quit that. It's the only thing you cannot do without. I cannot do without. And it's impossible to get out of. Whether you acknowledge it or not, it's there. But the more we acknowledge it, the more it shows up. The more we see it, the more we see it. I don't know if Yogi Berra said something like that, but my little version of that. So recognizing that compassionate. So at the very beginning of the Quran, which was channeled by Muhammad, was the song, the Al-Fatiha. And I think I sang it a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about vibrational mysticism. And it's translated into English from Aramaic. Al-Fatiha means like the opener or the key. And it starts off, Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. O Allah, the most merciful, the most compassionate. So when we go through these fastings and abstaining from certain things that are appealing to the senses, we become more merciful, more compassionate. We become more like the infinite ourselves, which is what our soul's desire is to be more like the infinite every single second of every day until you don't know time. There's no such thing as time, space. You're just one with it, and it does its good and perfect work play through you at all times. And that is my deepest blessing and wish for all of you, is to allow yourselves these opportunities for fasting, to get the true power in it. It's an empowering thing to have dominion over the earth, over your being, and not the other way around. Yogananda would say, you eat and the food shouldn't eat you, right? Get a hold of yourself. Or as Cher would say from Moonstruck, snap out of it. The delusion of the world of matter and all its enticements, like you have to have this and you have to have that, and live more simply. Simplify simplify, simplify, and watch how much more comes flooding in, because it knows you'll know what to do with it. You won't, as Helen said, don't squander your energy. Yogananda would say, after you meditate, don't get up and run out the door and just go start. He said that would be like milking a cow and then kicking the pail over as soon as you finish. Don't be in such a hurry to just throw it all out the window. Hold on to your peace. Hold on to your peace. And fasting makes you a more powerful holder of peace, because you can control it. People won't be able to get it so quickly. You'll be peaceful in the middle. You'll be calm in the middle. So with that, we look to April 21st, the Eid al-Fitr, the Festival of Sweets. And may the sweetness of those divine sweets taste better than ever, like divine nectar, manna from the gods. That is my deepest wish for all of us during this season. And if you want to know more about the Quran and things like that, send me an email, info@soulcallglobal.org, and I'll turn you on to some books. Thanks, Aiden. Some of my favorites that seem to just open the door and not tell you what to do. Does anybody like being told what to do?
No.
See, because I love it. No, nobody loves being told what to do. But it's just the practices. Like if you want to learn how to play an instrument, if you learn the scales, you can play anything. The scales are the most boring, but they open the door. So just like cut that groove of divine sacred practice, the prayer, and awaken to self-realization, realize how powerful and how blessed you are. Namaste. So the next song, so the theme for this month is emergence. And so when you go in, that fasting brings forth the feast of the eyes, the ears, the senses, the sounds of spring, right? Everybody watch the Three Stooges? Curly, I always hear, I hear the sounds of spring. It's hilarious. You'll have to find that someday. Three Stooges. I would try it. I'd go for it, but I'm not. Sorry. I'll work on it for next week. But there's a really wonderful song. Please enjoy, from Seeker 7. We're going to watch it on the video. And it's called You Make Me Feel Like Spring.